Year 1942. I am 27 years old. Doris, my mentor in surviving this industry, tells me it's time for me to go to an audition. Not an extra audition, an audition for a role. The difference is, like the distinction between walking and flying. Technically, both are forms of movement. In practice, they're completely different experiences. Auditions for roles in 1947. Let's start with how you even find out about them, because that's the first obstacle among at least 12. There are no announcements. There's no board with a sign reading, "Seeking actress for woman in her 30s, brunette, urban type." There's no newspaper column. There's no office you walk into with your CV and say, "Here I am, what do you have for me?" There is the network. Information that a given production is looking for a given type of actress travels through the network of professional connections at a speed describable only as gossip. But professional gossip. Gossip that carries real information for those who know how to listen to it. Doris had heard that a certain theatrical production was looking for someone for a small role. A servant in a period drama. 3 scenes, 8 lines. The producer is known. The director is known. The audition is on Tuesday. She tells me Tuesday morning. The audition is Tuesday afternoon. My first audition for a real role. I enter the building on 47th Street, 4th floor. The elevator isn't working. That information I receive from the woman at the entrance in a tone suggesting this is my personal problem. I take the stairs. On the 4th floor, a corridor. In the corridor, women. A lot of women. When I say a lot, I mean so many women that the corridor can't contain them all, and some are standing on the staircase, and a few are reportedly still on the 3rd floor, waiting for the corridor to thin out. All of them are here for the same role. The servant. 3 scenes, 8 lines. This is the thing nobody tells you about acting before you stand in that corridor. For every role, even a small one, even the smallest, there are 100 women. Maybe 200. Women who are better than you and women who are worse, and you don't know which are which, and they don't know the same about you. And the only person who knows is sitting behind closed doors and sees each of you for 30 seconds. 30 seconds. That is the time for an audition for a small role in 1942. 30 seconds to enter the room, say your name, deliver one monologue or read from a page, and exit in a way that makes the person behind the table remember your face. 30 seconds to be remembered among 200 women. Now you understand why theatrical school teaches technique, but surviving an audition teaches something completely different. The anatomy of an audition in 1947. Before you enter the room, you wait. The waiting can last an hour. It can last 3 hours. It can last half a day if the audition is poorly organized. And auditions in 1942 are organized according to the principle of come and wait, with no numbering system, which means the woman who arrived at 10 in the morning may enter the room after the woman who arrived at 2 in the afternoon, if the second happened to be standing closer to the door when the assistant stepped out for the next person. In this waiting, there is something very specific. 100 women in a corridor, all wanting the same role, all knowing they want the same role, all with varying degrees of awareness of what that means. This is an environment that produces a particular kind of tension, not aggression. The tension is too intelligent for aggression. This tension is more like observation. Each observes each, catalogs, assesses. Not maliciously, at least not always, simply professionally. It's the same observation you learn as an extra, now applied by everyone simultaneously to everyone simultaneously. The women in this corridor talk to each other. That's also something that surprises an outsider. One might think that competition means silence, icy looks, territorial marking of space. In practice, it's different. We talk. Not about the audition, about the weather, about the streetcars, about the fact that the elevator isn't working and who thought that was acceptable. We talk because waiting without talking is unbearable, and because being pleasant to the woman next to you doesn't reduce your chances at the role, and aggression toward her doesn't increase yours. I met women in those corridors whom I'm friends with to this day, specifically Doris, whom I already knew, and a woman named Margaret, who had red hair and an extraordinary ability to be outgoing without being irritating. Margaret got a role, not the one we were both after then, but another one 6 months later, and that role brought her to a set that changed everything. I'll tell Margaret's story another time. 30 seconds in the room. I enter. The room is small, a table. Behind the table, the director, the producer or his assistant, and a woman with a notepad who throughout the entire audition writes something about each person who enters and exits. And those notes are an Egyptian mystery. No one reads them except the person writing and the person they're written for. I say my name. They give me pages, sheets of text, a fragment of a scene, and I say I'll take a moment. I read. I have perhaps a minute to familiarize myself with the material I'm seeing for the first time. A minute to understand who's speaking, to whom, why, with what feeling. A minute. This is another skill they don't teach at theatrical school. Reading from the page. Cold reading, as it's called, reading a text you're seeing for the first time and performing it as though you've known it for a long time. It's a skill, and like all skills, it can be learned. I taught myself through a year of practice with random texts. I'd take any page from any book and read it aloud as though it were a script. A year of practice helps, but it doesn't make a minute into an hour. I read. I enter the text. I deliver 3 lines of The Servant that I have on this page. The director listens. The woman with the notepad writes. The producer is either present or not, and if present, he's looking at you or at his hands, and neither of those options tells you anything useful. Thank you, Miss Lane. I exit. End. What happens after "Thank you, Miss Lane" is its own chapter in the experience of being an actress. And that chapter is, you know nothing. You don't know if you were good. You don't know if you were bad. You don't know if the director remembered your face or closed the door behind you and was already thinking about the next person. You don't know if the role is already cast and they simply didn't bother to close the audition. You don't know if they'll call in a week or in a year. You exit onto the street. The streetcar runs. The elevator is still out. You take the stairs. The woman at the entrance looks at you the same as 3 hours ago. And now there is this moment. The moment after the audition, which I believe is one of the most defining moments in any actress's career. The moment when you decide what to do with the fact that you gave everything you had in 30 seconds and now have no control over what happens next. You can sit and wait and worry. You can go home and analyze every sentence you said and every sentence you could have said differently. Or you can do what I understood I had to do, and understood only after several auditions, not after the first. You can let it go. You exit. The audition is finished. Your part is finished. The rest belongs to someone else, to the director, the producer, the woman with the notepad, to fate in that specific order. Worrying about the part that doesn't belong to you is like worrying about whether tomorrow will be Sunday. Sunday will come regardless of how you feel about it. You let it go. And tomorrow morning, you practice your monologue, because the next audition will come when it comes, and when it comes, you need to be ready. That is the discipline of an actress, not the discipline of talent, the discipline of one's relationship to the work. I didn't get that role. I didn't get it not because I was bad. I know that now. I knew it more or less then, too, because I had enough self-awareness to assess my own 30 seconds, And my 30 seconds were not bad. They were correct. They were solid. I didn't get it because someone else got it, who was better or more appropriate, or had a face such that the director looked up and said, "her," before she'd spoken a word. That happens. That is most auditions. In 1942, I went to 11 auditions and got no role. In 1943, 8 auditions, 1 role. Small, in an off-Broadway theatrical production. 2 scenes, 5 lines. But my name was in the program. And for the first time, I saw Vera Lane printed as part of a cast. And that moment, seeing my name in a theatrical program, was more important to me than anything the role itself required. Your name. In print. As part of something. This is one of those moments that seem small from outside and are enormous from inside. And I think everyone who has ever seen their name in print in the context of something they were doing and being, everyone understands that feeling regardless of profession. I want to tell you now about something that isn't discussed when acting is discussed, but which is the absolutely central reality of this profession. Economics. How does an actress in 1947 sustain herself when she's not yet a star, when she gets roles once every few months, when between auditions she's an extra, and between extra work she's a waitress? I'll explain this precisely because precision matters here. Year 1943. I am in New York. I am 28 years old. My income in an average month looks like this. Extra work. I work an average of 2-3 times a month if the season is good. $5.50 per day. That gives me maybe $16 in a good month from extra work. Waitress. Sundays, 5 hours, $2 plus tips. Tips on a good day can be $2-3. On a bad day, they're 30 cents, and you feel there is no God. A theatrical role, when I have one, pays depending on the production. A small off-Broadway production might pay $5 for a whole week of rehearsals and performances. A slightly larger one might pay $20. You don't do it for the money. Total in an average good month, maybe $40-50. My rent? $13. A room, shared bathroom with 2 other tenants. Food. In New York in 1943, you can live on $7-8 a week if you're sensible, which means eggs are your friend, bread is your friend, the inexpensive restaurants you enter with the confidence of someone who has every right to eat there are your friend. Streetcar, 5 cents a ride, which is a small amount that accumulates quickly when New York is a city that requires getting from place to place. What remains after covering basics? Not much. Not much I allocate to workshops, once a month, the cheapest I can find, $4. 1 theater or cinema ticket per week, because observation is part of the work. And whatever remains for unexpected expenses, which are never lacking when you live in a building from 1890. This is the economics of a beginning actress. It is not the economics of romance. It is the economics of managing scarcity with sufficient precision not to fall off the rope. Frances, my roommate, left New York in 1943 and returned to her hometown in Ohio to marry a man who had a hardware store. We said goodbye warmly. She told me, "Vera, I don't understand how you do this." I told her, "Frances, I don't understand either. But there's something I understand less. How one couldn't." She looked at me for a moment, with that expression people have when they hear something that sounds like wisdom, but they're not sure whether it is. Then she went to Ohio. I think she's happy. I genuinely think so. I also think that 5 years after that conversation, when I was sitting in a dressing room looking at my name on the poster of a major production, I remembered her face and thought, yes, Frances, that is how you do it. One decision after another. One not leaving after another. Year 1944. I am 29 years old. I get an agent. Not get in the sense that someone gives me one. Get in the sense that after 3 years of extra work and several small roles and consistently going to auditions, an agent who saw me in one of those small roles, a woman named Harriet, about whom I'll say much more. Harriet approaches me after a performance and says, "I know who you are. I think you could be someone more. Call me." She gives me a card. The card is small, cream-colored, with her name and number engraved in a way that communicates, "This is serious business." I call the next morning. We meet 2 days later over coffee. Here, at Manny's, at this table, which was already mine then. And for an hour, Harriet asks me questions. Not about roles I've played, not about my technical skills. She asks me questions about what I want, what I understand by my profession, what I would do if I got a role that is technically a success, but artistically a compromise. These questions are not standard. Harriet is not a standard agent. A standard agent looks at your face and your CV and calculates how much commission you can earn her. Harriet looks at something else. At something she'd probably describe as, "Does this woman know why she's here?" And only if the answer is yes, does she start counting commission. I told her, I want to play women who are real. Not beautiful versions of women, not simplified versions. Real. Women who know things and have to deal with what they know. Harriet looked at me for a moment, said, "That's a good answer. It's also a difficult road." I said, "I know." She said, "Good, we work together." What an agent changes in practice. Before Harriet, I learn about auditions through professional gossip, networks of connections, Doris who heard something from someone who heard from someone else. I enter auditions cold, without context, as one of 100 women in a corridor. After Harriet. Harriet knows about auditions before they become gossip, because she's in direct contact with producers and directors. Harriet sometimes doesn't send me to an audition. She decides that a given role isn't right for me and protects me from wasting time in corridors that will yield nothing. Harriet talks to me before an audition, tells me what she knows about the director, the production, what they're looking for. Harriet is a filter. The filter costs 15% of everything I earn. 15% of a small off-Broadway role is nothing. 15% of a studio contract, when that eventually comes, is significant. But the filter is worth every percentage point. Because without a filter, you're swimming in an ocean of possibility without a map, hoping to find something worth finding before you run out of strength. I want to say something about Harriet before I go further, because Harriet deserves her own paragraph. Actually, several. Harriet Bloom was, in 1944, 48 years old and had been an agent for 22 years. 22 years in this industry it's a life. It's watching the industry change, watching stars rise and fall, watching contract systems evolve, watching technology change what's possible. Harriet remembered silent film. Harriet had spoken with actresses who didn't survive the transition to sound because their voices didn't match what their faces promised. Harriet knew things you don't learn, things you live through 22 years. Her office was small and full, not cluttered, full. Stacks of scripts she was reading, photographs of actors she represented at various stages of their careers, from debuts to veterans. Small notes pinned to the telephone monitor. Harriet had one rule that I knew from the beginning of our working together, a rule that distinguished her from most agents I'd heard about. Harriet never sent an actress to an audition that could harm her. Harm. Not in the sense of you won't get the role. Not getting a role is the normal outcome of an audition. Harm in the sense of lower your status, put you in a situation you'll regret. Take a role that's smaller than where you are, and thereby tell the industry you're ready to play smaller things. In this industry, what you play tells the industry what you can play. Reputation is what you write with every choice. Harriet made sure I wrote correctly. And when Harriet said, "Listen to me," I listened. Because 22 years of listening to this industry is worth listening to. When you get a role, even a small one, you enter the world of backstage, which for an actor is just as important as the stage itself. Dressing rooms. In 1947, a lead actor's dressing room is a room, maybe two. Privacy, a mirror, a chair, a place where you can transition from being yourself to being a character without witnesses. An extra's dressing room is a large room with long tables and chairs, where 30 women simultaneously apply makeup, put on costume, and talk. And this conversation is always the same conversation about the same subject, which is where you are, where you want to be, and what separates those two places. The makeup artist. In 1947, the makeup artist is the person who decides how you look on screen or on stage. You don't suggest, she decides. She knows the camera, knows the lights, knows what a given lighting does to a given face, and knows what to do so you look like what the director needs, which is not necessarily what you look like naturally. My face in natural light and my face under studio lighting are two different faces. The makeup artist knows how to make them one. This is a profession which in 1947 is practiced exclusively by women. Women with an almost medical knowledge of skin, of pigments, of how different colors register on black and white film stock, because film in 1947 is mainly black and white, and what looks natural in color may look completely different when reduced to a grayscale. Makeup artists talk to me differently than directors do. Directors talk to my face as a production tool. Makeup artists talk to my face as a material they understand and respect. I don't know whether that's a better or worse conversation, but it's different, and I notice the difference. Costume. Costume in 1947, particularly in a period film or a production with ambitions, is the work of a costume designer who has knowledge of the history of dress, of how people in different eras and social classes dressed, and who is responsible for ensuring every character looks as though they genuinely lived in the world the film is trying to create. Costume is also an acting tool. This is something I learned relatively late, because as an extra, you don't think of costume as a tool. Costume is simply what you're wearing. But as an actress with a role, with a character, costume does something to the body. It changes how you stand, how you walk, how you breathe. A corset from 1890, which I wore in one of the historical productions, physically changes your breathing. You cannot breathe as you breathe without it. You breathe differently, and breath affects the voice. And voice affects how you speak, and how you speak is half of acting. Costume designers understand this. Actors who allow costume to work, instead of fighting it, have that advantage.